We're live in 3, 2, 1.
All right, everybody. Well, welcome once again back to the Gamekeeper podcast here at the Mole Hole in the Gamekeeper studio.
You know, you've added something to the studio, and we hadn't brought any light to what's going on in here.
No, I'm so proud of him. He looks gorgeous.
Your little buddy Hercules is up in here.
Yeah. He is a fine-looking mount.
I would say he's a fine-looking animal for sure. He's a big animal.
He really is. Rhett Kelly mounted him. He told me that he had to order a special form for him.
Is that something they tell everybody, like to make you feel better about it?
They've never said that to me.
And by the way, he mentioned your name.
I'm sure he did. We need to give Rhett a shout out there.
Yeah, he said, "Is that Lannie still working up there?"
He's working hard.
Need to talk to Lannie.
Thought you had me covered when you said you were headed down. You said, "I got you covered." I'm like, "What does that mean?"
I bought you some time, so you got a little more time.
Rhett, so I tried to give Bobby some money before he went down there, and he didn't have time to come.
He knows better than that. So.
Yeah.
Well, gosh, this is a fun time of year, though. Turkey season is rolling. I'm waiting for it to come in Alabama. That's what I need to happen.
Yeah, you've been acting funny lately. You're missing out.
Yeah. You need to get on this public land, Bobby. I mean,
Yeah, well, we've had meetings all this week, TV meetings, and I've been kind of covering your roles in those meetings.
Yeah. I forgot I hadn't been here.
Yeah, so I've been here taking care of some business, but Saturday things will change for me.
I did hear a turkey on my trip, though.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Do we have any?
So where'd you go?
We went up to Western North Carolina. Spent some time up there with the kids and the mountains and the lakes and the streams up there. But sure enough, the first morning, I couldn't stand it. Of course, the time change. I'm waking up. I mean, it's dark up there. Not real late in the morning. Anyways, we hopped on up and I hopped out on the porch there, and sure enough, at the top of the mountain, I was like, "No way!"
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, and then Hayden walked out and it gobbled again. I'm like, "Golly!" And he said, "Why don't we bring our stuff?" I said, "You can't just hunt anywhere, son. You got to have a little bit of cook about it." But yeah, saw a couple strutters up there. So
that's awesome.
That really is good. Well, so today's show. Before we get way too deep, I've kind of got a little somber mood, but I want to make today's show. I want to kind of dedicate it to Gunner Kennels. And Addison Edwards, he lost Gunner in the last week, and what a fabulous dog with just a neat legacy and a neat story, and it just breaks my heart to hear that.
And nothing like losing a dog, especially for an outdoorsman. A lot of us had, our dogs before we had children, so it was our first child. So I know it's a tough thing. So.
It really is. And, Daniel and Neill Haas are coming in here a little bit later, and Daniel probably knows more about the story than anybody.
No doubt.
But anyway, I just wanted us to just remember Addison. He's going through a tough time, his family, and we're thinking about him. And so this show is dedicated to Gunner Kennels. And guys, if you need you can go to it's gunner.com. They make just the absolute best dog kennels you can imagine.
Yeah, I think he's got a lot of content about his experiences with Gunner over the last year, too. Daniel will probably tell us more about it, but he did a really good job, I think, documenting everything and just what they did, together. So
I can't read the letters. I started, and I can't read them.
When I lost Chief, you saying that reminded me of this. When I lost Chief, my wife came up and said, "Do you want to talk about this?" And I said, "No, I'm going to bury this as deep inside my psyche as possible. I do not want to talk about it."
Yeah. Oh, I don't even want to think about it.
They're special animals. Man's best friend.
That's right.
That's right.
Well, look, let's move on. Blood on the biologic. There's a lot of turkeys being killed.
There are?
Yeah, well,
where?
In Florida.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I heard that somebody missed one around here.
Oh, boy.
Yeah,
Here we go.
Dudley, can you tell a little bit about that?
Well, yeah.
And keep in mind, this is an hour podcast. We need to try to.
Okay, yeah. So I thought I was going to be the coolest guy in town and show up on opening morning of turkey season with a public land bird and plop it on the floor in front of everybody.
That'd have been Mondo right there.
After listening to George Mayfield, I made a couple of mental notes and actually used it in the field.
Did you use the acronym?
No, it was more of the, the direction of the gobbles and things like that. Apparently, I hadn't been paying enough attention to that. But Yeah, so I made one move. It was beautiful. I was walking in. Trees were still on fire around me in the dark. They had run a fire through there the other day. I set up, nothing, and I said, I'm going to move up another couple hundred yards. And I looked down, and there are turkey tracks that are black soot. There's no imprint in the mud. You see black ash tracks.
Some fresh sign.
And I said, you know what? I'm going to sit down. And I sat down, called, gobble, and
he was already on the ground.
Played with him for an hour, made one move, and they came in behind me.
Oh, well, they tend to do that.
And I got a little bit of the nervous jitters and should have let them do their thing. And I decided to make a move and make a shot, and I just botched the shot.
Well, as Mr. Fox says,
20 years.
20 years. You forget that about that in 15 or 20 years.
So
you won't feel any better about it until you go put your hands on one.
That was my fourth turkey miss, and I think I've been hunting for 36 or 37 years. So I'm pretty proud of that. That's a decent record. I missed 3 in 1 year one time.
Well, we hope we don't repeat that this year.
And but I left with a smile on my face, and I had an awesome experience, and I can't wait to go back.
Well, that's good, Dudley. It did kill one thing, though, Lannie.
What's that?
I was here to witness it. It killed his productivity the rest of the day.
He had the mully grubs.
Oh, my gosh. And then he was asking everybody, what did I do wrong? I just don't know.
You think you shot over him, or you just weren't down on your gun? I
don't
think
want
the
to
most common mistake is not being down.
I'm going to have to start making excuses when you ask that question.
Did you even look down the barrel?
And I'm not going to say that I had my backup glasses on or any of that stuff.
You just think you hurried the shot?
Or that I was using my son's shotgun,
You think you hurried the shot?
I should have waited.
Gotcha.
It was close. The turkeys were 20 yards away.
They put so much pressure on you. That's what it's so fun about it.
Yeah,
So,
it is.
Well, I'm looking forward to today's podcast. As I mentioned, we've got Daniel and Neill Haas coming in here to talk turkeys and old school Mossy Oak and all the things that we love so much. Awesome. Yeah, we got a bunch of questions I'm sure we'll ask. So before we bring them in, Mac, have you got a question? Not a question,
I
but
thought he was the commercial guy.
Commercial for us?
Mac. I do. With turkey season here for us and right around the corner for the rest of the people, when I think about spending time at the hunting camp, I think about the good memories made, and most often the good memories are made on a full stomach.
Oh.
And so GameKeeper Butchery offers a wide variety of meats that will be delivered directly to your door, and you can check those out on GameKeeperMeats.com.
We like...
there's some good stuff to eat on there.
Oh, yeah, it is.
It's amazing.
Well, and Vandy's working on a lot of new stuff, too. So we're really, we started out trying to curate and look where we can find the best sources of these wild game and offering. But now we're getting the opportunity where he's working on a wild boar chorizo right now. So he's working on that, working on some Cajun boar and duck sausages. So we're going to have some more marquee items coming up pretty soon.
My wife Kelly and I tested some of that the other night. Made a little cheese plate we cut up the sauce.
Yeah, was it the duck and wild boar?
It was both the chorizo and the duck and wild boar.
So did you enjoy it?
Yes,
I hadn't eaten any of it yet.
the duck and wild boar had a good consistency. Like it'd be really good in gumbos and things like that too.
Well, good.
Yeah. So hey, Mac, I see you texting over there. Can you, when you get finished, look today with the guests, since you're long-standing, grown-up
compadres
with them, running buddies, if you will. I need you to really pay attention, and not necessarily. We kind of let you off the hook last week. He's in here as a fact checker. And the Apex guy, he was throwing out a lot of facts that I don't know. I
don't know if he could have got a word in, though. We were pretty
all that tungsten, the metal density, and all that stuff. You could have raised your hand and.
I learned more after Jared sitting in here than I did coming in, and I needed to know a lot of that stuff to even fact check it.
I don't think Jared needs much fact checking. He sounds like he knew exactly what he was talking. Now, if I say something, definitely need to fact check.
Oh yeah.
I even found a minor mistake in one of my mentionings where I mentioned steel was denser than lead. It's not denser. It is harder. And I knew that, but the wrong word came out of my mouth. I got to come clear with
Well, I
that.
just want Mike to pay attention, and especially today. So don't let us miss a good opportunity for a question, okay?
I definitely won't.
You know what I think we should talk about, Bobby, since we have the time?
What?
What? We should talk
Who?
about.
We talk about
we should
somebody?
Well, before the Alabama season, starts up. We've had a little bit of gray area on your definition of turkey limits for yourself versus turkey limits for your fellow hunters on your tract of land. So I'd like to publicly, talk about this so we can get it, on record in front of everybody, so there will not be any disputing what's going on down in the Flatwoods. Because I'll be hunting.
I can be the mediator.
Yeah, I'll be hunting with my child, and you're going to be hunting with your child.
Yes. Yes.
So, but I'll just like every other year, I'll let you make the rules. I'm going to follow them, but I'm going to make sure you follow them, unlike in years past, if that's okay.
Historically, there's, at times there hadn't been a lot of birds down there. So we had several members. So we limited everybody to 2 birds a season.
Okay.
So
And
as
that's
that
what
has
we've
gone
done in
by-
the past.
Yeah, that's kind of
and
what
people have adhered to it, as myself, and then other people have not adhered to it.
Well, there's been some years when you hadn't killed your 2 birds, so I've gone ahead and helped
Oh,
you.
I wonder what that was.
And then there's been years when I pre-killed birds from next year's limit this year. So
I figured that's
So
the
you
way it
can
was gonna go
borrow a
this year.
bird from a year in advance
Well,
if you have to.
He's really good at managing pressure as long as it's not him.
Well, you just have to be creative. But I tell you, I'll be perfectly honest with you. After listening to Dr. Chamberlain and all this stuff, I think it's 2 for me, and that's going to be it.
So is that 2 for you? And so do I get 2?
You can have 2. Yeah.
Okay. So does Jesse's count as one of yours?
I don't think it should. I think
So does Hayden count as one of mine? Of course it does.
no, it doesn't. I think a guest gets a bird.
So we have 2 birds and a guest bird.
I think
So you're gonna.
I think
That's where you're
fair.
gonna. Okay. What if Jesse wants to kill another one?
Well, that'll be tough
He
on
did
me.
that. Okay.
That'll be really tough. It's a lot of getting up early, and that's gonna
There you go.
push her
That's
out.
going to push her out.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I
So
don't think that'll be a problem.
so we're good. We actually it's a 2. We're going with 2 birds.
Well, Toxey's in our little
He
arrangement
doesn't
as
count.
well, so we can always borrow from his limit should we need to.
I'm gonna let you do that.
Yeah.
I've made a career of
But-
not borrowing from his
Speaking of Toxey, he stood on one's head yesterday.
Yeah, I was
So
proud to see that.
he got out of the gate pretty good.
He's good.
He
Me
can
too.
yell. But there's one thing, I hate to use the word jealous or envious, but he's got such a sweet yelp.
Every time I get the pleasure of hunting with him, he's usually behind you, because he puts you out in front, being the gentleman that he is, unlike you. And I know it's him, but I have to turn my head around because I swear I think there's a flock of turkeys behind me every time. He's unbelievable.
It'll make the hair stand up on the back
And
of
and
your
a
neck.
great woodsman too. So
So I wish I could learn to have that sound because he's definitely got it.
he got it. That's for sure.
He's like, it sounds like we're blowing smoke around the balls, but he really, really, he's like a Michael Jordan with a turkey call. So
Not as much the competition type, but
No.
he sounds like a
just
flock
like,
of
"Hi,
turkeys.
He
killing
does
a turkey."
not sound like
He's a
a
killer.
turkey. He sounds like a bunch of turkeys.
Lord have mercy. I got a feeling this is going to be really interesting.
It is going to be interesting.
It looks more like the gar hole to me.
Yeah.
The couch.
Yeah.
This is
Typical-
where you-
typical Bobby fashion.
The,
didn't even
you
get
put
to
the
sit at
wicked
table.
stepchild over
Yeah,
there.
we're way over here in the corner.
He's in the
but
hot seat.
That's just typical Bobby. He just
Well,
not very accommodating for guests.
Tribunal.
Can't sit at
You-
our
you
own
missed
table. Full disclosure, nobody is harder on Bobby than I am, and this might get ugly here in a little bit.
Lanny,
Don't change a thing.
at one
Absolutely.
time, and Dudley may have been with us, but one time, maybe 10 years ago, we got lost in Las Vegas in a parking garage. I couldn't remember.
I think you lost your job that night.
So it's kind of I've always remembered it, but I couldn't remember where I parked the car. And we ended up walking around
We
this
walked
parking
like
garage.
6 miles.
And at some point, Neil said, if I ever get in charge of the company, the first thing I'm going to do is fire you. So I've always remembered that.
You don't have long.
Yeah. The
I
countdown.
was like 18 years old when I said that. So
Yeah, well-
I might have meant it, I might not.
Well, that's
But I will
something
say we
else.
had walked a long way.
You know what, Bobby? People change.
Well, look, we are way down. Let's get this thing back. Okay, well, let's start with you, Neil, since you've got that twinkle in your eye. Let's talk about taking Mr. Fox, if you would, some of the stories.
Yeah, I guess, like when we were kids, we grew up and, he took us, Dad, we were, growing up as twins, and Dad had this, he couldn't take both of us, so one of us was left out to dry. So whenever Dad would take one of us, Papa would take the other. And so we grew up with him teaching us the ways of the woods and how to turkey hunt and all that kind of stuff, the same as our dad did. So, we split our time a lot. We probably spent, as a dad, we probably hunted with him a little more, but most of the time, if we weren't hunting both together with Dad, one of us went with Papa. So it's kind of like a second father figure for us. And then kind of the roles have reversed over time. Now it's us, carrying, walking him through the woods, holding his hand, getting him sat down on the tree. He's old school, and he doesn't want to, have to sit in a pop-up blind and, just because he's 90 years old, he's still, if he's going to go turkey hunting, he wants to sit at the base of an oak tree and do it the old school way and wearing his bottomland and all those things. And but
That's
it's
really
just cool to see the roles reversed, from when we were kids and him showing us and teaching us how to hunt and taking us and carrying us through the woods. And now, we're taking care of him and getting him out in the woods and, making sure he gets a turkey every spring. So it's pretty cool to see kind of the evolution of that.
There's a lot of great Mr. Fox terms, but he says when one day the worm turns, and that's exactly what happened there.
That's the thing with, you got the cliche hunting analogy where with the footsteps, where when you're a kid, you always got the size 12s with the toddler behind them, walking behind, and then as you get older, Dad started taking Papa more, and now we got a new kind of footsteps where it's Papa in the middle, Neil on the left, Daniel on the right, and there's three sets of footsteps walking equal with each other because, as Papa said, we got to help him from keep him falling on his fanny. So we both got, we look hilarious in that little electric golf cart when we're going turkey hunting because it takes all four of us. Papa, I can't remember what he called us, some old Roman army term, but he, Dad and Papa will be in the front seat, me and Neil are just sitting in the back, and then we get out and it's all hands on deck trying to get it going. Two of us helping him walk and Dad helping get the spot set up. And even to the point that this year we've got the spot that Neil was out of town and Papa's turkey that he killed, first turkey that he killed last year, it was me and Dad and Papa. Turkey's gobbling at the same spot this year, and it's an easily accessible place, which is one of the biggest things for getting Papa in there. Dad is mowing the area and sweeping out the leaves of the path to get to the tree because you can't Papa can't walk 800 yards to get to a tree. You got to pull a golf cart up in the pitch black dark. With last year, we had to pull a golf cart up to with turkeys roosted 100 yards away. So you got to be as silent as possible. So as much preparedness goes into that as you can possibly put into it because nobody else really cares as much about killing a turkey at this point. As long as Papa can get one, then everybody else get theirs after.
I think that's the sentiment in the whole turkey world. I hope nobody is rooting for anybody to kill a turkey more than Mr. Fox.
Yeah, you really feel that.
And,
No, I do.
And one of the coolest.
I worry about it.
My favorite part about hunting with him now, my whole life has been my favorite part of hunting with him. But no matter what, whether we were kids, and obviously, I've only been here for 30 years, and so before that, I can't attest to that. But whenever a turkey comes in, no matter how old he is, even last year, 89 years old, when there's a turkey coming in, he absolutely falls apart.
He tore up. Yeah.
He shake. You would think you're in a earthquake. Legitimately, he absolutely falls to pieces. His heart goes crazy, shaking, and that's, I think, something that we all hope that when we're 90 years old, we can still do that, and we still have that same feeling like we're a child turkey hunting for the first time.
100%. 100%.
That's always
I just got goosebumps, but yeah.
Neil dug up this old clip of Bob Dixon and Papa from the 90s, and Papa's sitting there. They're deer hunting, actually. But he's sitting there with the deer, and he said, I don't ever get tired of it. If I live to 100, I don't think I'll lose my enthusiasm.
I remember that.
Now
I remember that
we're going to
too.
find out, it seems like, because he's outlived all his old hunting buddies. And
Yeah.
And I've told Toxey this before, but just to watch that a son respect his parent and the way he does that, and then the way you fall in line and you're respecting Toxey and you have this love and respect for your grandfather, it's just really touching because it's that's something you don't necessarily see that
Not
every
much
day.
around these days, no.
Yeah, I mean it's so much respect and it's in love. It's so important.
And I think it's inspired a lot of people to, for lack of a better phrase, wake some of their grandparents up and get them back out in the woods.
Yeah. That's an
Experience.
I bet it has.
Yeah.
So, Daniel, can you talk about Mr. Fox bringing the turkeys in here years ago?
Yeah, I might get fact checked on some of the. I've got the story
Mac on the ball.
Wake up, Mac.
written out, but I'm not going to reference that. But yeah, it's a great story to listen to Pawpaw talk about. We've actually, shockingly, we've never documented. Neil is like Pawpaw's personal videographer. If we're filming Pawpaw for something, Neil's his right hand man, and I don't think we've ever captured that on video. So we should probably get that this turkey season. But yeah, so Pawpaw, obviously everybody knows his history. Born in 1930s, started hunting as a kid, and Tom Kelly estimates that when Pawpaw started hunting, there were less than 2,000 turkey hunters in the country. So when you think about his streak of this being his 74th consecutive season, hopefully to kill a turkey, Tom Kelly is 94 and he was born in the 20s, so he's been hunting a little longer than Pawpaw, but you can't imagine there's more than Pawpaw's 90. His next closest hunting buddy that was in his original club, except for maybe one guy, died when he was 80. So he's outlived them all by already a decade. You can't imagine there's more than a handful of people, maybe single digits, that have been turkey hunting as long as he has. And when all of us grew up, you're going to have people that lived to 90 and they got an 80-year streak because they killed their first turkey when they were 6 and never stopped hunting. But for where Pawpaw is, there just weren't many hunters in the early days. So anyway, fast forward to Pawpaw in West Point, living in Clay County, and he decided that he wanted to bring back the turkey population in Clay County, and so he goes about, I think, what was it, Alabama? At Alabama, Georgia, somewhere a little east of us, where he got the turkeys from.
Yeah,
And,
I heard it was Catfish Point.
Yeah, I thought it was too.
And so let me stop you. So, but he grew up turkey hunting above Mobile, down in that Alabama River basin, where there's always been turkeys. Isn't that right?
Yeah. So he grew up in Mobile. The hunting club that he grew up in, his brother was a member. His brother Toxey was a member before him, and then his brother got him in. And I think there were only 16 members at the time, and there was a big hunting club. They started it in 1926. It's the guy that started it is in the like Alabama Conservation Hall of Fame or whatever. Like he's done a ton for wild turkeys. Anyway, so the club started in like 1926, and on that stretch of Alabama River, turkeys have never gone extinct, and it's one of the only places in America that the eastern wild turkey has not gone extinct from. So. And they use that area actually to relocate turkeys throughout, the whatever 50s, 60s, 70s, and on. And so the reason that there was only 2,000 turkey hunters back then, I think, was because it wasn't accessible. There wasn't many turkeys around, but that area, turkeys, and I think y'all have covered it on past podcasts, and that old original strain of wild turkey and stuff.
Yeah.
That's kind of where it was. And so that's
Southeastern.
And that's why he's been able to turkey hunt 74 years in a row, is because he's had a place to go for 74 years, and
so he had all these experiences down there in that swamp that people up here had never had. They didn't have turkeys.
Exactly, and then so he fast forward. He goes to college at Mississippi State, and he decides he wants to start a family in this area, and he's got some family ties to this area already anyway. And so anyway, he gets here and he's like, well, he's obsessed with hunting turkeys, and just like, I don't want to have to drive 3.5 hours from a hunting club every time I want to go hunt a turkey, and not just that for selfish reasons, but he wanted all his friends and everybody around here to get to enjoy what he's grown up enjoying. And so I think that gave him the idea to relocate turkeys, and so he brought in turkeys and relocated them here and some other areas around North Mississippi, and was a big part of this, especially in Clay County and a few of the surrounding counties, was a big part of why we have turkeys today. So it's
That's
pretty
huge.
cool.
So he but when he was going about reinstating them, he was, back then he couldn't just pick up his cell phone and call his buddy in Jackson and get it.
Send me some turkeys
get
up here
permission
today.
for it and get the law passed. So obviously we all know turkey hunters, so you can imagine this scenario. But when you talk about reinstituting the population, the next question from everybody else is not doing the work like with Pawpaw is, when can we hunt them? And so Pawpaw had to make sure, okay, if we go through the trouble of trying to raise these turkeys and let them evolve in the wild, and we got to give them a few years. How many years are we going to give them before people start breathing down our necks wanting to kill them? And it was just off of Highway 50 up here, so it was in a really visible spot where these turkeys were, when you think about there being none before. So he talks with the guys in Jackson. They put the turkeys out. They're going to give them, it was either 4 or 5 years that they were going to wait, and then if they bred and rebred and everything seemed good. They were going to open up the first hunting season after 4 or 5 years. So anyway, a couple years down the line, or actually when he brought them, the guy brought the turkeys in February. It was 10 hens, and Papa said, "What are you doing giving me 10 hens in February? You gotta
Where's
give me
the rooster?
Yeah, give me something to breed them with." And he said, "Mr. Fox, I guarantee you that at least half of these turkeys are going to breed this year." And he said, sure enough, 6 or 7 of them nested, and they, the population did pretty well in the first year. So, like I said, it was right off Highway 50. It was in a really visible location for a few years. Pawpaw all the time. People would be driving down the road. They would see Pawpaw at the store or whatever, and they'd say, "Mr. Fox, we saw your turkeys over there. They're looking good." Everybody would call them Fox's turkeys.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
so anyway, it was a good and a bad thing because they were in such a visible location that people were driving down the highway and seeing turkeys on the left and turkeys on the right. They're like,
We got plenty.
They're everywhere.
You're
Let's
telling
get
me,
'em.
You're
Yeah.
telling me it's not time to hunt them yet, but every time I drive down here, I'm going to hit one with my truck. Like, what's the deal? So, again, communication is not as visible back in those days. So this guy kind of goes behind Pawpaw's back, does a little under the table deal with a politician in Jackson who's a little sleazy to, at the last minute in one of these state congressional sessions, push through an earlier season. And so Pawpaw is freaking out. He's like, "We're not ready. If you do it right now, then the population will just get wiped out. We're not ready for a season yet. You got to wait." So Pawpaw hops in his probably rickety car. I don't know what he was driving then, but I imagine it was rickety. So he hauls down to Jackson and he gets the floor at this session. And so the guy that I think he was one of the lead, he was one of the Fish and Wildlife guys from Mississippi, biologist, and he lets Pawpaw talk about the situation in Clay County, and the guy basically tells everyone that I'm going to let Mr. Fox talk to whoever would be the lead biologist for the state who would carry the strongest opinion. And he said, "I'm going to let him talk to him, and then whatever the biologist says, he knows better than any of us. That's what we'll decide on." And so they shut everything down. He gets off and goes and talks to Pawpaw, and he said, "All right, you little peckerhead, I bought you a week. You better go make it happen." So anyway, they ended up getting it where it didn't come back too early. And I was reading this thing about Duff Holbrook, who kind of pioneered the turkey relocation methods that the NWTF used, and that really relocated a ton of turkeys in populations that weren't huntable, primarily South Carolina. But there was somebody said, if you see a turkey in some area, I don't know South Carolina very well, but there's a huge area of the state where they say if you see a turkey, Duff put it there, and that's kind of where we hunt. If you see a turkey, Fox put it there.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. One other thing that's interesting to think about too is like relocating turkeys. Like for instance, here when they just turned out maybe 10 hens and like a jake or two or whatever it was, and within 4 or 5 years, I mean they were hearing like 15 turkeys gobble in a morning, like crazy numbers. And then you think about today's world, it's so hard just to raise one nest of poults. Do you think that the nest predators at that time did not know what to hunt for and what to look for, and you think that's the reason it exploded off the bat, because they just didn't know that they'd never seen a turkey egg before, so they didn't necessarily know to look for it? You think that might be one of the...
That's highly possible.
Yeah, you see that in population introductions in wild species. They boom at the beginning, and then the predators. And predation was probably a lot lower back then, too.
Back then there weren't hardly any
People
deer.
were trapping, too.
There
weren't-
were probably coon hunters.
Everybody was coon hunting, small game hunting. So that helped a lot.
So what I find interesting about that story is the 10 hens in February, no roosters.
And nowhere to rooster at.
They had
I love
already
that.
been bred. Obviously, they'd already been bred.
Yeah.
So when you think about that, that's those turkeys didn't come from far from here.
This is my favorite story at Mossy Oak. And it's the great thing about it is the truth. And this precedes the fistful of dirt. And we talk about we live this life that's dedicated to wildlife and conservation. I mean, the conservation work that he started in the beginning predicated all of this. So, anyways, I get fired up.
Yeah.
when I hear
I
it.
think that's why everyone at Mossy Oak is just loves the any chance they can get to serve Papa or Mr. Fox in some capacity, because he's one of those guys. He's from the greatest generation ever.
Yeah, no doubt.
And he's one of the, in my opinion, one of the greatest of that greatest
No
generation.
doubt.
And so he spent an entire life, 90 years, doing nothing but serving other people, helping other people, giving back to everything, giving back to wildlife, and giving back to his friends and his family. And everybody sees that, and they just want to be able to give back to him in any kind of way. You know, if it's just holding the door for him while he walks in the office or something, everybody just, you know, they just want to give their little part back to him because he's giving back to every one of us.
You know, I've never, ever, ever will you hear anybody say a negative word about Mr. Fox.
That was
it's kind of like during turkey season, and especially in the days leading up to it, it's like a Texas high school football town. If you go to Waffle House or Tin Lizzy or at the grocery store the other day, people were like buzzing, like, hey, you know, before the season started, people saying, "Oh man, I hope your papa gets one this year." And then when the season starts, when you come in, everybody's in the diner wearing their camo. You can tell who's hunting and who's not, and everybody is. You know, it's like if you had a football game, but you couldn't hear about the score until the next morning. Everybody's waiting to hear.
Yeah,
has papa got one yet? Has he got one yet?
He's everybody's friend, and it's interesting. Like, I feel like I'm talking to one of my buddies that's my age. You know, he's twice my age, but he's just everybody's friend.
Yeah,
It's
back
so
in the
easy.
day, whenever he was working with Brian Foods, they had this guy come in and do an evaluation of all these employees and stuff. And the guy that, and then when he sat down with Papa and he did the whole evaluation and everything, and he came to, I guess, Mr. George, who was his boss, and he said, what was your conclusion? He said, I've never seen this in my entire life of doing this. He said, well, he said, this man is incapable of telling a lie. He said, I promise you, he's incapable of doing it.
And he can impart more wisdom in less words than any human being. You know, he's got those 2 or 3 words, and it's like, what is it?
Yeah, you just don't want to disappoint him either.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. I mean, you guys, what a blessing y'all had.
I've had a few times throughout my life where I let him down or disappointed him, and it is the worst feeling. You can't imagine how bad of a feeling that is. It's horrible. It sucks.
He really, like, I mean, if people get old or people, if they're declining health or whatever, or when you start to miss people, everybody gets kind of positive nostalgia where you get, you know, you hear people talk about somebody that maybe you weren't a fan of, but they always inflate their good characteristics, forget about the bad ones.
Right.
With Papa, it's, you know, you can tell by talking to anybody, it's none of that going on as he's gotten older. He's literally, that sounds like a ridiculous thing to say, this man's incapable of telling a lie because it's not possible to be human, but that's Papa. I mean, he is, if you've ever seen him around our grandmother, like in marriage, never in my entire life have I seen a more patient man. I mean, it is unbelievable. He's the most patient human that I've ever known.
I tell you what,
he's a great example.
If you tell him, if you look him in the eye and say, "Hey, Papa, I'm going to do this," or if he calls you and said, "Hey, I need you to do something for me," he expects you to do it.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to do it.
I'm on his list right now.
You're not going to say, "Oh, I forgot." Like,
I had to tell him that last week because of the snowstorm. I forgot to do something. And when you said that, I was like, I cannot believe I did this. I have completely let him down.
So
on that same note, I gotta say, because it perfectly applies to that. But Papa worked for Brown Foods forever, and before he retired, he was like the VP of procurement or something like that. He had all these relationships with farmers all across the country and cattle at times and primarily pigs when he retired. But when he retired in the 90s, he comes from a different age in his early days, but I mean the 90s, not that long ago, there's still a lot of corruption going on back then. He was buying, I can't remember the number, but it was tens of thousands of pigs a week, and every single deal he had was a handshake deal.
wow,
Unbelievable. I mean, he was doing millions of dollars worth of procurement with all these farmers, and every single one was, he shook your hand and it was going to happen. That was better than a contract.
yeah. You know, I can remember since, when I moved up here 26 years ago, man, he made a point to just go out of his way to make me feel welcome. But there were a lot of Sunday afternoons where I would see him and Miss Evelyn riding around, and I think that was a every Sunday afternoon. Maybe they rode around out in the country and looked at some of his land.
I still see him riding around.
And he'd always refer to her. He either called her, I think he would refer to her as his bride. I'm with my bride, and we're
that's what it is. If you saw him driving down the road, if he was driving, they were going 10 miles under the speed limit. If she was driving, they were going 20 miles over the speed limit.
Yeah. Probably looking for cool plants to dig up and all kinds of fun.
There's a cool quote that I think just Papa's got, like you said, he's got so much wisdom, and one of the things you said too about he feels like he's everybody's buddy. He's got a lot of quotes that are more well known, but one of them that he said that I think is some of his brightest wisdom that perfectly talks about kind of what it means to be a gamekeeper and that connection that you share with other people, even if you've never met them, if you got the same passions. And he was talking about just his life in general and how much he loves being outside and working the dirt and what Mossy Oak means to him. But he said, if you work on the land, if you're getting your hands dirty, then you share a connection, regardless if it's the same habitat or if you've met them or not, or you're hunting the same game. You share that same connection with somebody in Nebraska or Iowa that shares that same love of working the dirt. And he said, I don't know if a fellow in the concrete and steel in New York and Chicago share that same connection.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point, because there really is something about getting your hands dirty. There really is. Yeah. And Mr. Fox clearly gets that, because he's been a farmer for all these years, cattle. And
he was planting food plots before anybody. I mean, that's why we call him the OGK.
I think
That's what he is.
Time out. He there in 1926
before you.
1920. They may have planted the first food plots for whitetail deer ever.
Probably so.
At that club down there.
Possibly.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say they did.
I know it's one of the oldest. I don't know about hunting clubs. I think there's some waterfowl hunting clubs that are really, really old, but I know it's one of the oldest turkey hunting clubs in North America. So, I mean, it's pretty cool.
That's pretty
really
cool.
is.
I mean, it was started 4 years before he was born.
And so, look, I would think on the Mossy Oak Go app, you can see the television show that you did down there 4 or 5 years ago.
Top left, yeah.
Yeah. So, what would they Google, or how would they go to the Go app and then type in?
I honestly, I don't. I'd have to look it up.
Just go to the Mossy Oak.
The way they're titled,
would probably
surely Choctaw Bluff.
It would be under hunting the country.
I think that Bob
Hunting
Dixon
Country
hunt
website.
is on there too, with him
yeah.
in the blind when he gets all tore up.
Yeah,
It's so
that's
awesome.
Yeah, and the cool thing, I think a lot of people know this story, or know about it. But the hunting club, that's where the Mossy Oak name came from. They didn't name a tree the Mossy Oak tree because Mossy Oak, the company.
Yeah.
There was a tree there that had existed 100 years before Mossy Oak ever came about, and that was they broke they drew for territories every Friday night before the weekend hunt. And they would draw cards, and whoever draw the highest card got to pick their territory, and then they'd draw cards again and go down the line. And the territory where that tree was, Mossy Oak tree territory, was a really good place, and it was on a sandy ridge right before it kind of drops off in the Alabama River bottom, and it was full of big old growth, natural growth pine trees, and there was this big giant post oak with Spanish moss all over it, and it just didn't look like it belonged in that spot, and so they named it the Mossy Oak. And that was kind of the landmark in the center of that territory. And so they would that was one of Dad and Papa's favorite places to turkey hunt growing up. And so whenever, Dad decided, the whole, with this full of dirt and that and this and that, he, trying to come up with names, and he'd gone through some ridiculous names that just, you say them out loud now, you're like, what?
Thank you.
That we didn't go down that road. But and then I think he said something, and I think him and Papa were riding down the road one day, and he said, you know what, I was thinking about it. What about Mossy Oak? Because and then it rang a bell with him. He said, wow, that's it.
That's it.
As soon as he said it, I think they both agreed, that's what it should be called.
Wow.
And when we went back down there, the tree got struck by lightning and died. And we were able to salvage some of the wood, but
I hope that's not bad karma.
Yeah, the stump that was left. I hope not. That was probably 10 years ago now when they were born.
At least.
But the stump when we went back there with Papa, where it was, that had as it starts to get kind of hollowed out, there was a silhouette. That was a perfect silhouette of the original Mossy Oak logo that was left in the center of the tree.
That is
really
so cool.
That's sitting on the porch at Shmula, isn't it?
The silhouette's not in there, but a chunk of that was the stump that was still in the ground. But yeah, there's a chunk of the wood that was salvaged. It's not pretty to look at because there's no bark on it or anything. But yeah, it's sitting on the front porch at Shmula.
Wow, what a cool old tree. Mm-hmm. I've seen some photos of it. It was impressive.
Yeah, it doesn't look
here.
like you would imagine it. It doesn't look like the original logo where it's a big, big giant top of it's really tall and straight, and it just literally doesn't look like it belongs in the area where it sits, where it's at.
Well, so while we're here and talking about you kind of brought up your dad, and I would love for you guys, if you could, to reminisce about your first turkeys. And I gotta think that we were talking before you guys got in here about how good Toxey can yelp. I mean, he's really good, to say the least. But at some point, you guys were just hunting with Dad, and you probably didn't realize you were hunting with the guy who is a world-class turkey hunter. And I mean, I'd just like you to talk a little bit about that.
I have a story that reminds me of, but I do remember when I was a kid one time, and I was turkey hunting with Pawpaw. We were riding around at West Lockard, and I asked Pawpaw, I said, I'd started looking at, like, paying attention to, like, calling competitions and stuff like that, and noticed, I was like, Dad's never in. I was like, would Dad win, like this world champion turkey calling contest? He looked at me and he said, he probably wouldn't win one of those world champion turkey calling contests, but I'll tell you what he would win. If there was a contest for the best woodsman and the best turkey hunters, he would win that. And then my opinion, that's more important than being the best turkey caller in the woods. Yeah. And that always stuck with me. So I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, we can talk about it. Daniel killed a turkey before I did, so
yeah,
first.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It's one of those things where I can barely recall any turkeys that I killed after my first one until I was on into my teens. There's not a lot of like vivid where I can remember being picked up, going to the woods, and exactly where I was when I killed it. But my first one, I don't know how old we were, 7, 8,
7 years old.
But I don't remember any other memories from probably even within a year of that. But I remember we were sitting, it was an afternoon hunt, and we rarely hunt in the afternoon around here. And me and Neil and another guy were upstairs playing video games. And Dad was going to take one of us out for the afternoon, and so I got to go with him. So I was like, all right, let's go. And
a lot of times we drew straws or something like that.
Yeah, it was probably, I don't know how we got to determine which one of us got to go, but I was the lucky one. So everybody that's been around here for a while obviously knows the old lease that people just considered Mossy Oak property at Cotton Mill. Yeah. So anyway, we go out for an afternoon hunt, and we go to the Cotton Mill, and we walk down the railroad tracks, and we're going kind of toward the south side of the property, and some turkeys are gobbling right off this ridge from the tracks, and so we dip off on the west side of the tracks and go sit down, and I killed my first turkey, and I can still remember shooting it, and the rest of the turkeys still hanging around there, and me being like, A, why aren't we going to get this turkey, and B, are we allowed to shoot anymore? And Dad's like,
what's the limit?
No, you gotta sit here. You don't want to spook any of the other turkeys. Like, as long as it takes, you just got to sit here until they kind of make it off on their own. So they sat there moving around like turkeys do sometimes, and 5, 10, 15, whatever, however long later they walked off, and me and Dad went out there. And
I bet.
I can't recall another turkey that I killed within years after that, but I remember that one like the back of my hand. I can see the dang exact railroad tracks that we walked in on.
Oh, wow.
That's cool.
So mine involves a lie. I wouldn't have killed the turkey without lying to my dad. It's a white lie. So we had hunted that morning. We didn't do anything, and we were sitting on the porch. It was probably 10 o'clock in the morning, maybe a little later. And they were inside the camp, and I was standing on the porch, and I came running inside. I said, Dad, I just heard a turkey gobble. He's right over there. He's all right. Let's go. So we got our stuff on. I did not hear a turkey gobble. Not hear. We walked over and walked up the road, and he blew a crow call, and a turkey gobbled as exactly where I told him I heard one, and I did not hear a turkey. And
That's great.
That's awesome.
Whoa. I just want. I was just like, we turkey hunted the year when we were, I think, 6 years old. It was like kind of the first time we went with a gun, and we tried, and we caught some turkeys in range, and just being 6 years old, getting a shot. And I think I was just I just wanted to kill a turkey so bad, I was willing to just tell my dad, hey, I just heard a turkey gobble, just so we could go out and hunt, just to give an excuse to
Your brother was already on the board.
And it was one of those things, we sat down and called this turkey gobble, and he was by himself, late morning, and just typical flash hunt. He was right there in 5 or 10 minutes, and I just remember shooting him and running out there, and Dad getting out there and stepping on his head, and then he turned around, and I'm like flying through the air, like jumping and giving him a big bear hug, but yeah, that's like Daniel said. There's a lot I don't remember. Maybe after that, but that one, will stick with me till I'm dead. So
yeah,
those first turkeys have a way of doing it. Yeah, they sure do. So do you guys? Seems like I remember you guys being in some of the. I don't know if the word is contest, but y'all. There's a thing here in the state where there's 2-man teams and y'all hunt.
It's just hunting with friends. We I guess you call it a turkey hunting tournament. But yeah, just More of a reason to just get together with some of your turkey hunting buddies and just, maybe put some friendly wagers down and get out and turkey hunt and just some friendly competition. But, it's.
So my question is, you guys being twins, when y'all are turkey hunting together, can you telepathically, or do you think you guys have an advantage because maybe you know what the other one's thinking because you're twins?
This 2 days ago, opening morning of turkey season, we went hunting and we called these 2 turkeys in, and Daniel's sitting 10 yards from me and on a tree to the right of me. We call these turkeys in 50 yards, 2 longbeards. They're kind of behind a treetop from me, and Daniel, he can't get a clean shot, and they kind of walk off, but they're still gobbling. They're kind of out in this cutover. And so I decided to go back, 80 yards or so to try to pull them back to Daniel. And when I do that, I leave my phone by the tree, and Daniel's like trying to signal stuff up there, and I'm like, and I have no idea what's going on. And so to answer your question, no, because if I said yes, then we could have figured it out without cell phones, but we could not figure it out without cell phones. And so finally I got back up there and Daniel was able to tell me what happened, but no, that doesn't work.
Yeah, okay. Well,
there's probably a little bit of team chemistry that there is, but there's no magic.
There's definitely team chemistry.
Yeah.
So
we
you
got a lot of turkeys together.
Yeah, I was about to say. It seemed like I've always heard that y'all tag team turkeys, and maybe y'all won one of those contests one year, or
well, I mean, the thing
should have anyway.
Well, it sounds weird saying winning them.
Mac and I have won a contest twice, but Daniel and I
quit texting Mac.
Daniel and I do a tournament together, and then Mac and I do a tournament together, and Mac and I have won twice. Daniel and I hadn't won yet, so.
And for just to clarify for anybody listening, because like hunting tournaments get a bad rap because some of them have different rules, and there's predator tournaments where you're just trying to, it's a body count kind of thing. Like turkey things are literally just buddies getting together to fry turkey nuggets, boil crawfish, and hunt just like they would every other Saturday of the season. You just all come together afterwards, and if you happen to double up with your buddies, you score them up. But there's no there's no ill will involved, or at least not in the ones that we're doing. I'm sure there's some other out there that get a little more intense about it, but we're just buddies.
It's one of those things, we all have buddies and stuff, especially college buddies. We don't see that much, and everybody gets to go turkey hunting in the spring, but everyone doesn't really get to turkey hunt together, and everybody's not part of the same camps and stuff like that. So it's just kind of a chance for everybody to kind of be like in the same hunting camp for the weekend.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, man,
it really does. So that leads me to the point I knew Mac is the most inquisitive person I've ever run across. Mac, surely you've got a question you'd like to see these guys answer.
I would like to reference the turkey tournament, and one cool thing about it is Neil and I don't get to hunt together that often. So that's one weekend a year that we get to spend time in the woods together and kind of get to get caught up on everything in life, and now kids and things like that, which is a lot of fun. And another benefit to the tournament, some of the proceeds we actually give to the NWTF for conservation. So there's a lot of benefits to that. But one question that I have for between the turkeys over there is, what differences do y'all recall or that y'all have noticed with hunting with Pawpaw and your granddad versus hunting with your dad as far as tactics, style? I know Pawpaw doesn't put his gun on his knee and something like that. Or is there anything else that has stood out to y'all that their differences complement each other or their kind of style of turkey hunting?
Pawpaw, the way Pawpaw grew up, when they turkey hunted, back in early days, one, you didn't have bottomland. You wore the army camera, whatever it was. You couldn't hide in the river bottom. There's, especially early in the season, there's no leaves. And so you basically had to build a blind, and you pretty much sat in that blind all morning, and you didn't call, you'd call 2 or 3 times every 30 minutes, and you just sit there and be patient. And then now it's more of a run and gun. You chase them if they're gobbling. If they're not, you go to another spot, or it's just a whole, so I think it's just, different generations are, kind of learn different ways. But, I think Pawpaw would be more of the patient, sit still and be patient kind of turkey hunter. And Dad was the more scatterbrained, wanting to get after them and run a gun kind of tactics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Pawpaw was 60 when we were born, so he's in his 70s. When you're old enough to actually be paying, you're not paying attention to the tactics of the guy you're hunting with when you're 8. So when we're old enough to pay attention to that sort of stuff, Pawpaw's into his 70s, nearly 80. And it was a funny thing yesterday. I was talking to Grant and Pawpaw was talking about the history of mouth yelpers, and he was talking about the first ones. What was the guy's name? There's a guy in Mobile that made them for everybody.
Yeah, there was a couple of guys. I know one of the guys in the club, Ben Ratcliffe, had made the first turkey calls. I get maybe the first turkey calls for their club, but he made them out of condoms, and he would, I think, copper wire, and he would stretch those. So he'd buy like packs, like basically in bulk, would buy condoms to build turkey calls for all the people at the club. And Pawpaw was, did that as well and made his own turkey calls back in the day.
He was talking about, so Pawpaw, that Mr. Radcliffe would make him. That's where Pawpaw got him in the early days, and then he would try to, after World War II, there was this insane surplus of prophylactic kits or whatever. So there was a whole lot of latex flying around, and so Pawpaw made some himself. But anyway, they were talking about like the history of mouth calls and how they improved and got the tension in the calls more consistent, and how easy they were to call back then versus now. And Gran butted in for Pawpaw and said, after Toxey grew up, Pawpaw decided he didn't really feel like even blowing a mouth call anymore. He's just going to let Toxey be his personal caller. So he said
it's a good choice.
Yeah. So after he got older and Dad would hunt with him, it was like Pawpaw. He didn't. He had a chauffeur at that point. He was good with letting Dad do the calling.
I would imagine. I mean, I can picture in my mind an older, wise Mr. Fox and a young Toxey wanting to run and gun. And I can imagine there were a lot of little conversations in the woods when the turkey's gobbling. Dad, let's move over here. No, we need to stay. I bet there were a lot of those.
Sure.
Yeah, there's a few people that remind me, like, when I think of them, like, I think they might be part turkey, and it's like Dad and Pawpaw are two of those people. Like, y'all had George Mayfield on. He's like one of those guys. He's part turkey.
Yeah.
Bob Dixon, and the one person that comes to mind that's not is Bobby, but that's something we can discuss that another time. Yeah. But it is, one of those things that, like, they're such good woodsmen, and they've turkey hunted so much that they almost think like a turkey, and they're like, and I'll hunt with Dad, and it's like, and he'll just instinctively do things, and I'm like, I didn't even think of, and we'll kill a turkey because we wouldn't otherwise killed, and it's just like,
he'll tell you what the turkeys are going to do before they do it. He's like, how do you know that? And then they do it,
I mean, it's just, and that's the beauty of turkey hunting, is the cat and mouse game between you and the turkey, and that's just, being down in a pine plantation or in the hardwoods or whatever it is, and it's just back and forth, and I think one of the beauties of that old school way of turkey hunting without decoys or anything, it's just you and a call and the turkey, and it's that cat and mouse game. And when you shoot the turkey, he's still looking for you. He still hasn't found you. He's coming in, he's looking, he's behind every tree, he's going behind a tree, this and that. And I think one of the greatest parts for me is the thrill of that is just when you shoot the turkey, when you squeeze the trigger, he still hasn't found the hen he's looking for.
Right.
And I think that's one of the cool parts of hunting the way we do.
You explained that well. That sure is.
And I'll also add that two other people that you can't be part turkey when you're young. It's just something that's got to come when you're older. Anybody who's in their 20s or 30s claiming to be part turkey is a little ahead of their skis. But Pawpaw and Dad, very much so. Bob Dixon, and not Bobby. Through however genetics work, Will Dixon is going to be part turkey, and Neil is going to be part turkey because they're two incredible woodsmen. Tom Kelly's got some quotes about hunters think they know their property, but they don't really know every inch of their property. Unless you're a forester and you're marking timber, you don't really know. You might go somewhere you hunted a turkey 5 years ago, and a thing in your mind is a quarter mile from where it was 5 years ago, kind of stuff. But me and Neil hunted together, and there was a picture that was just on my Instagram story, and Neil walking, and it was in some pines, and nothing really distinct about the picture other than some pine trees. And nobody else would look at that picture, probably even people that we're friends with, and have any clue where we were. We could be in Mississippi or Alabama. It's literally nothing distinct about it. And Will Dixon sends me a message and said, those turkeys right there in that spot are evil. And I was like, you have no clue where we are. You're a ninja if you know where this picture is. And he said, you go down a dirt road, you take a right, gates on the right, there's some ponds on the left, ponds on the right, you walk through between the ponds, there's a green field on the end, there's a little Indian mound right past there. I was like, Will, that was like, what, 10 years ago that y'all hunted there?
He hunted, it was 8 or 10 years ago since he's been there. He's only been there once, and they had one good turkey hunt there. I don't even know if I was with him, maybe in Bandy. I'm trying to remember, it's been a while, but yeah, the fact that he knew that just by seeing a group of pine trees.
Yeah.
I mean, I literally get. You know,
That are 10 years older.
But that's just
Yeah.
that Bob was the same way, and he just comes through that naturally.
Yeah.
It literally blew my mind. I mean, I'll get lost going to places that I've been going to since I was 5, and Will sees a few pine trees. He's like, oh yeah, I know exactly where that is.
Well, I can tell you.
And you can also be an excellent woodsman and a terrible turkey hunter.
Oh yeah.
That's me. Yeah.
I follow Will on Instagram, and I enjoy seeing those pictures and his family that's getting started. And speaking of Neil, you've got a new member of your family.
Yeah,
Young Toxey.
actually last night introduced him to Pawpaw for the first, granted Pawpaw for the first time.
Is that
that's
right?
awesome.
Yeah. And so it was cool seeing him hold him. He's kind of weak right now. He's never been a big like baby, holding babies. He's just always kind of let Grand do that. But he was holding him, and he was just kind of like his head was like kind of leaning back like this, and he was just kind of like almost upside down. I'm like, "You're doing good, Pawpaw. You're doing a good job." But it meant the world to him to
I bet.
Yeah.
be able to hold his grandson.
Yeah,
so.
and so your son is named Toxey.
Yeah, Toxey Jr.
That is so cool.
Yeah. So when we were born, Dad had twins. I think originally he wanted to name his firstborn son, Toxey Daniel Haas Jr., which would be named after him, and he didn't get that luxury because he had twins, and so he split the names.
Double up.
He named me Toxey Neill Haas. Neill's off my mom's side of the family, and then named Daniel Fox Haas, and then gave him his middle name and Pawpaw's middle name. And so that's kind of why the name split up. And so my son is Toxey Neill Haas Jr., so he's got Dad's name and then my middle name. So anyway.
And after I got older, that was my biggest gripe in hindsight with my parents, that I think Fox is the coolest name on the planet, and I go by Daniel. So if I'm lucky enough to have a son, then there'll be another Fox that goes by Fox. And
That's awesome.
It's also interesting that you've got a cousin Neil, and the cousin Bob Neil wrote the book The Flaming Turkey, right?
yeah, Mom's Cats. It's on the. I was
That's a different Neil.
It's Robert Hitnell, wasn't it? The Flaming Turkey, but that's on my mom's side of the family, ironically. So yeah, there's history of turkey literature.
Turkey
my
on
mom's
both
side of the
sides.
family.
Which he actually grew up hunting near or at Catfish, I
Yeah.
believe, which is where the turkeys came from
Exactly.
that populated
Yeah.
Clay County.
Never heard that. I never knew that. That's awesome.
It's just wild family. But like Pawpaw did not grow up in West Point, grew up in Mobile, but had family here. And to find out that the first office building they bought, years later, they found out that A.P. Cottrell, his
Granddad,
his grandfather or great grandfather built that building in like 1892 or whatever. So it's just like crazy to think about. Like he moved. The only reason he settled in West Point because he went to school at Mississippi State. Met our grandmother. She's from Starkville, and they decided to he bought a farm in West Point and decided to settle here. But it's just crazy to think about the family history here that he didn't really know about almost.
Yeah, all those things
Serendipity.
get in place to make this. Yeah. Did you use another big word, Bobby?
I'm sorry,
Boy,
Lannie. I
you're
keep
just killing it today,
keep
aren't
throwing
you?
you off with these words, but
He's a famous author. So.
The Mossy Oak story, though. I mean, it's got so many things that just line up perfectly.
Well, and speaking of Bobby, another crazy thing, not Bobby directly, but if it weren't for the intensity of the hatred between Alabama and Auburn, then Mossy Oak wouldn't exist, because our family on Pawpaw's side, like Neil said, it's a lot of Mobile roots, and they all go to Alabama, big Alabama family. Pawpaw's dad went to med school when there was med school in Alabama back in the day, and so they go way back. So Pawpaw wants to go into some sort of forestry, wildlife, agricultural kind of degree that he can't get at Alabama. So his logical next choice in Alabama is to go to Auburn. And I mean, that story has happened a million times in the state of Alabama or anywhere where there's a big football rivalry. And his dad said, well, you can go to Auburn, but you're not going to get any help with tuition.
Yeah.
So Starkville came in between there, and then Grand was homecoming queen while Pawpaw was there, and then they met, and the rest is history. But yeah, if Alabama and Auburn got along a little better, then
We might not all be
Pawpaw
there
would have been an Auburn Tiger, and then Mossy Oak would have never existed.
That's a cold story.
Yeah.
It really is. There's so many levels.
It's so good telling. I've spent a lot of time telling Toxey's and Mossy Oak story over the years, and even ran into people like, "Wow, what agency helped you create this story?" And it's like,
Just
this is the truth,
Yeah, and another note on the likelihood of Pawpaw ending up here and Dad being born and everything happening, but and this is. You could go deeper into this story, but most people that know Pawpaw, a lot of people don't know, but he had tuberculosis when he was in college, and he was in sanatorium or whatever it's called for a year or more.
3 years, I think.
And anyway, he, obviously a lot of people died at that time, and they gave him a medicine, and it was like, I don't know, tenfold the potency that would normally render someone sterile and unable to have kids. And Pawpaw got a big multiple of what would, at a basic level, make you sterile. So anyway, he tells Gran, all she cares about in life, I mean, she got a great job offer from IBM out of college. She was super smart, but all she really cared about in life was having a family and raising kids. And so Pawpaw told her before they got married, he's like, I'm taking this medicine, and the doctor says that there's a really strong chance that I'll never be able to have kids. And that was pretty brutal for Gran, but at that point, they hadn't even been together for that long. So a lot of girls, they weren't deep enough in the relationship. She could have just said, okay, well, that's a deal breaker. Yeah. But they stayed together anyway, and Gran got pregnant like less than a month after they got married. And then, so anyway, you got defeating all those odds. They end up having, Shirley, Nana, and Dad, but none of those kids were ever supposed to even happen.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's a fascinating story.
Yeah.
It really is.
Someone should write a book that specializes in nonfiction.
Look, I think that you would be the one to tell this story. I think
he doesn't do any nonfiction.
My first turkey was named Toxey. That might be a good story for another podcast. But before Mossy Oak came out in 1983,
86.
My turkey.
Oh, okay.
My first turkey was killed in 1983.
Yeah, my bad.
Look at Neil fact checking.
Dudley would have been suspended from the podcast for a little while. Had gone on.
But so I killed a turkey named Big Toxey in 1983. My dad was watching TV one day, and there was a commercial on TV for Bryan Foods.
Yeah.
And it was this bully, big old dude wearing overalls, and he kept stealing everybody's hot dogs at a picnic. And they said, "Oh no, it's Big Toxey." And I don't know, for whatever reason, my dad thought it was hilarious. And
I think Toxey worked on that commercial.
Yeah, and so my first turkey I killed at my farm in Ebenezer when I was 7. Its name was Big Toxey.
Wow.
And come to find out, I mentioned it to Toxey a couple years ago, and he said, "Yeah, I was just out of college working for Bryan Foods in marketing, and this advertising company from Atlanta came in to do the commercial, and they said they liked my name and wanted to use it in the commercial."
It's an unusual name. You don't hear it many places. I've seen it on there's a community somewhere called Toxey.
It's just south of Butler, Alabama. It's on right on Highway 17. West Alabama, Toxey, Alabama. Yeah.
So look, I've got a couple of trivia questions I wanted to ask you guys.
Oh boy!
I don't know if y'all listened.
You didn't tell us about this.
I'm still mad I missed the grizzly bear question. I'm not going to bring that up.
Is this part of every podcast?
It's starting to be.
Yeah, well,
I've got a trivia question too. I'll throw it out.
Yeah, okay.
Daniel's
All right,
smart.
so
You
I
better
don't
look
think
it
this is a tough one, but it's well documented how obsessed Toxey, your father, is with hunting wild turkeys. And I wanted to ask the question: does anybody know the farthest Toxey has traveled to kill a turkey? And Lannie, I'm asking the young men at the end of the table.
I'm gonna let Neil answer that one.
Do you know the answer?
No.
New
I
Zealand.
think I do.
Yeah, I think
You
you're
can't
right.
get much further than New Zealand.
That's exactly.
Ding, 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 ding.
Okay, all right.
He actually shot it's like an orange. You've seen that?
Yeah,
turkey
it's
mountain? It used to be in
downtown.
Thomas
Yeah.
downtown. It's like orange and white. It's like the
beautiful.
crazy. Yeah, it's beautiful. But and you would think, maybe the turkeys in New Zealand just look like that. And no, it was rare for even then. I think Dad and Cuz were actually hunting, and they were, they were up on this mountain, and they were looking at this huge flock of turkeys. and Cuz was looking at binoculars. He said, "Toxey, you ain't gonna believe this." This was like right when they first started out. Like and Cuz was like, he goes, "There's an orange turkey out there." He goes, "What?" He goes, "I swear one of those turkeys is orange." And he pulls binoculars up and so they call these turkeys up and they're like I think they said they're like where it kind of like a little pass between two big hills or mountains or whatever, and they call these turkeys up and they're all kind of funneling through this pass and they're sitting like above them, and so when he shoots a turkey, I think he shoots them like straight down like off the side of this cliff. But yeah.
It's a beautiful mount. They hung in his office for forever.
Yeah,
Where is it now?
I think it's in the production office.
Is that
It
not
was in
the thing
corner of his
that's...
original office.
Or maybe it's here.
That's not that odd color phase?
No, that was just
we...
bleached from the sun.
Okay.
It's just that old.
All right, so I've got one more. So many years ago, you guys were running around. Y'all were terrorizing Oak Hill Academy. Mossy Oak sponsored the PBR, the professional bull riding, and there was a bull that it was legendary. Daniel already knows where I'm going.
These are pretty. Yeah,
Come on,
you give me these hard questions.
bring us back on for something tougher.
Yeah.
And he was in the
Mossy Oak Mustang is in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, that was. I was going to ask the name of the bull.
And to take it even further, there was there's still some being sold online, but he was so famous that there was a buck and bull ride along that went outside of grocery stores and sporting goods stores in Texas, Oklahoma, and rodeo country.
Yeah.
And there's still a couple that's like several $1,000s, but we should probably start a.
We need one of those.
We gotta have one of those.
The studio needs
Actually, it's got a big
Yeah.
sign. Mossy Oak. You can Google it if you want. But
Let's start a
Mossy Oak
GoFundMe
Mustang,
and get one of those.
Get one of those things
we
down
probably need to
here.
get that back home.
Yeah, well, my questions to you are obviously a lot tougher, but I think you're an easier target.
I'm definitely an easier target.
Can you think of maybe a tougher question like off the cuff?
Not off the cuff. I do have.
You got any office
Trivia is supposed to
trivia?
make you think.
Yeah.
Okay, I got one more.
Oh, you
I think you will nail this one.
I'm not writing those checks.
But at the time that Bottomland came out, there was another pattern that was very similar to Bottomland, but it had a little gray in it. Do y'all know what it was
Are you
called?
serious?
These are even easier than the last one.
Any more brain busters?
Why don't you ask me what color the sky is? Grass.
Yeah.
And they've only been here their whole life.
Lannie, I'm gonna hand this off to
There
you.
we go.
Just so it doesn't go unanswered, the hill country was made in the early days, and they're the exact same silhouette, the same pattern. They just have different color tones. And
Yeah.
Bottomland's a little muddier, and hill country's a little grayer.
So that
So there are some people that probably even own a button-up shirt or a jacket. It was like probably just product numbers 001 through 4 that had hill country on it. It was a pant, shirt, jacket, and
It's one of those things that I guess throughout the 5-year history of camouflage patterns, some have overshadowed the others, and you saw that with Breakup overshadowing like Shadow Leaf
everything.
and Shadow Branch. Breakup came out and it just took off, and then so there's a lot of camouflage patterns that people really don't know about. There's actually one of my favorites is this old canvas. They used to paint these camouflage patterns on like a canvas thing, and there's one that sat in Dad's office for years, and they never did anything with it, but it says Dovefield camo on it, and it's got like some stalks of like some stuff that you would see in a Dovefield, and it cracks me up. But 99.9% of people, Mossy Oak fans or people that wear Mossy Oak or hunt Mossy Oak don't know what hill country is, and it was the second pattern ever.
Yeah.
100% I know what Bottomland is, and it's just funny, the patterns that take off and the patterns that don't.
so
and old clothes age differently.
Yeah.
So like most people. Well, the funny thing, and I know you're probably about to get into the niche world of Mossy Oak old school collectors out there, but back in the day, in the early days of when people were buying stuff on eBay, when you could get it for thrift shop prices 5, 6, 7 years ago, nobody ever listed hill country as hill country. And then, as anybody who goes to the National Wild Turkey Federation convention goes, there's basically only one camouflage that's even in the building. If you're not wearing Mossy Oak, then you
stand out.
Yeah. So people, it's almost like the red carpet for some Hollywood thing. Like people look forward to going to WTF and wearing their best old school Mossy Oak. I mean, you see it all coming out, the old obscure Carhartt stuff from the early 90s or whatever it is. But in the early days, like I said, you never saw hill country labeled as hill country, and it was priced the same as everything else. And then a few times at at NWTF, somebody would walk up wearing a Hill Country jacket or a shirt, and they didn't even know what it was, and we'd talk about it, and their eyes would light up like, oh, this is rare. And then now, freaking, there's a guy listing a Hill Country jacket for $300 on eBay. That's just like the basic cotton jacket, and which is a bit ridiculous. If you're listening out there, whoever you are that listened to that, that's too much. Bring price down.
So there is a
I'm in at 100.
Kind of like that shotgun Bobby sold me for $100 the other day.
yes, I did that as a favor, Dudley. So
Yeah, that gun. There are people who would pay $50 for it, so you never know. You got to have the right on.
So there is an underworld culture where people are looking on eBay and other places and going to thrift stores and trying to find the vintage Mossy Oak patterns and then selling them, huh?
I think there's a group of us that are probably responsible for that. Like,
Yeah.
it was like David Hawley and Jason Hart and like a couple other people, just absolute sharks, and they would just buy up anything that was listed on eBay. And it was back when it first started, it was kind of rare for someone would just put an article, they'd put a original Bottomland shirt from the early days. It may have been one of the first shirts ever made, and they'd put it up for $10 just to get rid of it, and basically like a yard sale. And then we'd pay $10 for it, and knowing that we would have paid $500 for it because we think it's so cool. And then people started, the Bottomland resurgence or whatever, and the vintage camo market altogether started coming back. And I think it was because of us just desperate to find these old articles of Mossy Oak clothes, and then it just became I guess just people just hadn't seen it in so long, and all of a sudden they were like, wow, this is really cool. So now it's like, Bob Dixon vest on eBay last week went for $2,100.
That's
Wow.
crazy.
Wow. And so
Mine's in the back of my truck. I need to put it in.
we've seen hats, just a hat on eBay go for over $100. It's just some are more valuable than others, but it's just outrageous. It's actually really cool to see the people love that, the old camo like that.
Yeah, it really.
Yeah, I have to say one more name. There's a guy named Casey McKee that outside of Jason Hart has the most ridiculous collection of old Mossy Oak stuff outside of people who are in the family. And David Hawley is basically David Hayes. He's like a big brother to me and Neil. But excluding those people, a guy named Casey McKee has the most incredible collection of the old Mossy Oak, the first jackets that had, there was like the
Corduroy collar.
Yeah, one didn't have a corduroy collar. One did have a
003.
Floyd collar, and people love those jackets because that's just kind of like it's in style now. People think it's cool with like general, Filson type stuff they're buying already. So anyway, Casey's got an incredible collection of some of that, but Hart has I think he's got the shotgun collection cornered.
Whether it's a shotgun or old article of clothing, like if I ever see anything cool, I'll send it to Hart like every time, and every time, yeah, I've got 3 of those. I've got 7 of those. Yeah, I've got 10 of those. Like, I haven't sent him anything in 5 years that he hadn't replied. Yeah, I've got that.
So do y'all ever go through your dad's attic or your Mr. Fox's attic and find neat stuff that they stuck away?
That stuff's long. We started doing that a long time ago. So most of that stuff is
I've got
already been filtered through.
Yeah, we've got some really, really cool stuff from Pawpaw that came out of the attic, and I've got a couple shirts that like the buttons are about to fall off and they're super faded. You can't hunt in them anymore, and even some of the old companion stuff like this cap. That's some of the really cool stuff that the companion stuff. There really wasn't a ton made, so it's harder to find.
I got a text last night. A guy sent a picture of a companion's hat, asked me where he could get another one. And
I got that same text message. I said, if you want to send that hat to its rightful home, then I'll give you the West Point hat.
A good method is just to go to the grocery store or Walmart or something around West Point, and you'll see. Sometimes you'll see somebody that doesn't look like they've hunted in 20 years or ever, and they'll just have this brand new looking.
Right, I've seen that too.
And it's cool how some people have their favorite. Obviously, Bottomland it's like the soul of Mossy Oak. Even if your favorite pattern's greenleaf, tree stand, full fall foliage, whatever, Bottomland is a part of all of those. So everybody loves Bottomland, but some other people, there's like a pattern that's just their absolute favorite. Whether it's greenleaf and they're a turkey hunter, or tree stand, or even up to forest floor. There's some people that just freaking love forest floor. Please bring it back.
Yeah.
But there's a lot
Lannie's
of people.
one of them on that one.
Man, I love my Force 4
Dad,
pants.
Dad
loves his
that's one of
Force
Dad's
4
favorite patterns.
I have two pair of pants. I'm down to one now.
Yeah.
I'm like freaking out about them.
That's the only pair of pants Dad wore for years. Turkey hunting was
Well,
Force
you-
4.
Yeah,
You just sit on the ground. I mean, you just look down.
used to it we called it mixing and matching.
Yeah, that's what
and
we did early on.
And I loved that. It just looked so
That was
effective.
our main sales pitch in the apparel days. I mean, because you could wear, full foliage and tree stand, and it all had the bottomland background. We'd all work
A lot of
together.
thought went into that, and it was super effective.
Yeah.
Yep.
I know the first time I put it on like you, it raised my game 100%. I don't know if it was mental. I mean, I knew I looked better. I knew I looked better, but it made me a better woodsman.
Yeah, my dad literally came into my room one day and said, "I no longer have to carry my snips when I go turkey hunting
Right.
because somebody came out with this new camo, and it makes me look like a tree.
I think the reason that the camo was so well thought out, it reminds me, what was it, Tommy Boy, when the little ad or whatever, he's like, made by the working man for the working
Yeah,
man.
that's
and
right.
I think, it was made by a turkey hunter for the turkey hunters, and it was, then that's the sole reason for it existing was to hide from turkeys. It wasn't to sell, camo T-shirts at a NASCAR race. It was. To hide from turkeys, and that's why it was so well thought out. The bottomland was such a good pattern because it was hunting the Alabama River bottom, just fed up with not being able to hide from turkeys, having to build blinds all the time, not being able to move around and get on different trees, and then looking at a tree one day and being like, well, let's just make clothes that look like that tree, and we'll be good. And that's why it's such a perfect turkey hunting pattern, because it was made for turkey hunting.
Genuine and authentic.
Well, and the whole culture has been so influenced, by every bit of the aspects of turkey hunting, from the conservation to the woodsmanship that it requires to everything else. I mean, I was actually in the woods this morning on some public land and ran into a guy, and he said, "Man, how important is turkey hunting in Mossy Oak?" And I told a lot of the stories that y'all told today, and he's like, "What?" And I'm like, "It's everything. It really is."
If you want to know how important turkey hunting is to Mossy Oak, drive by any of the offices in West Point on open.
Come by in the morning.
It's just empty parking, especially down here at the bowl hole.
Yeah, I've
There's not a
actually
car in sight.
I've actually taken a photo. I
remember
hunted
that,
opening morning this year, but the 2 years before that, like one car in the parking lot.
So
I do need to mention too.
something.
yeah,
This guy I ran into in the woods was one of the nicest public hunters I've ever met in my life. A guy named Land. Anyway, so I want to give him a shout out.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
Oh, do you?
I've
But
Yeah, I think he's from
Back to
Aberdeen.
the Dixon vest. The
thank you for helping steer the keep this.
all right.
there's a
Shout out
Edit
Land.
that out.
a lot of people
No,
have
shout out Land.
a lot of people have cool stories about how they got their Dixon vests, and now it's like, I don't even know if it's peaked or not yet. I mean, like Neil said, last week somebody paid $2,100, and this week there's one on eBay. Somebody saw that on Mississippi Turkey Hunters or something, was like, well, I'm getting mine out of my closet. And so then the next day there was one for $2,500 on there.
Oh, wow.
But it wasn't always that expensive, but it was always, just like anything, if you're looking for, there have been hundreds or thousands of turkey vests made. So if you're looking for one specific one from a year, you'd have trouble finding any of them. But the Dixon wasn't always that expensive. I'm sure it was always hard to find, and it was limited. And it is the greatest turkey vest ever made. But before people were dusting them off to sell them for $2,000 on eBay, if y'all remember Sheldon, who I guess worked for the company that helped us make them, I didn't have it. Everybody, when we got older, we were in college, and everybody's like, Dixon vest. I didn't have one, and Neil didn't have one, so we both have stories about how we got them, because Dad didn't buy extra for us back then. So, but anyway, Sheldon, he found out I didn't have a Dixon vest, and he has 3 of them. Since he helped make them, and he was saving them for in case there was ever an emergency where somebody needed one, like me, or even way more of an emergency than me was the other vest that he gave away. So anyway, he gave me one of the prototypes that it's not numbered. It's one of the ones before that. But his other vest that he gave away, there was a guy who, and this kind of talks about what turkey hunting especially and Mossy Oak means to everyone, because this request to Sheldon happened before people looked at the Dixon vest and just saw dollar signs in their eyes. It was just something to commemorate an incredible turkey hunter, Bob Dixon.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So anyway, this lady calls Sheldon, and she was like, "Hey, I've been trying to find one of these Bob Dixon turkey vests that Mossy Oak made, and I was given your name as somebody who might be able to find one for me. My husband is a huge Mossy Oak fan and a lifelong turkey owner, and he has the same kind of cancer that Mr. Bob has, and he's terminal, and he doesn't have very much longer to live. And his get choked up, but his one thing that his one request is that if there's any way possible, he wants to be buried with a Dixon vest.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
So anyway, so Sheldon got her the vest, and the man was buried in a Dixon vest.
Wow. Well, boy, these folks are passionate about turkeys and Mossy Oak. It's wow.
There's a couple of Dixon vests that aren't going to go on eBay, and that's one of them. Especially, and Will has number one, and that's like, I've only seen it once, and he brought it to the camp one time. We were doing some videos and stuff, and we needed some video of the one vest, and like looking at it, you're like get chills like looking at it.
I bet.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then Neil, what you got yours
Mine
from?
actually, yeah, Will gave me mine. I was hunting with Will one time, and I was like, I wish I had a Dixon vest. I just when they came out, we were kids. We just didn't think anything of it, and and then fast forward, it's just like, man, I would really wish I had a piece of that, and that's the whole reason that people love Bob, and that was kind of a reason to make the vest in the first place, is so people could have just a small piece of Bob and carry it with them when they went in the turkey woods, and that's the cool part about it, is being able to have kind of a piece of Bob with you while you're out in the woods, and so that's I just kind of said something. Well, I was like, man, I just wish I had one, so that whatever. Like a year later, he comes up to hunt, and we go to hunt, and he's like, I brought you this, and then he hands me a Dixon vest. I was like, I can't take that. And he was like,
Wow.
He's like, dude, you can't hunt with that one. He's like, if you want one, you can take this one. And it was like down, it's a prototype vest that when they were designing the vest, they sent it to Will to look over and see if there was any needed changes and this and that, and it's pretty much the same thing. But anyway, yeah, he was like, look, I've got a couple of vests, and he's like, you can have this one. He's like, so anyway, so
That's
yeah,
awesome.
Will gave
Very cool.
It really is. So
shout out Will, going down to Florida with
go
him on
Will.
Monday. We're going.
he's a great young man.
Will and I are going to Florida to Brandon Stories on Monday to finish his grand. He's never come to Osceola, so this will be the last one in his quest for a Grand Slam. So
Nice.
Cool. Keep us posted on how that goes.
yeah, I'm excited.
Sure will.
So.
Well, is there? I just want to say the one thing that's kind of jumped out at me. We've really enjoyed talking to you guys, and I would like to do this again about some other subjects. But
Sorry if we've gone over our
no,
time.
not a problem. But I think what I want to say is, you guys, two young men that have had just a great opportunity to be mentored by Mr. Fox, and I would say that you've had a great example from your father, because the same characteristics that Mr. Fox has, Toxey definitely has. So it's passed down to you guys. So it just kind of gives me goosebumps to think about the lessons and what all Mr. Fox has done to teach people and help people, and Toxey's the same, cut out of the same cloth, same person. And then here you two guys are. So it'll be interesting to see what y'all do out there in the world. And
I don't know if those are shoes those shoes aren't possible to fill.
Yeah,
so
you can't fill those shoes, but
we'll do our best.
You can't spend this much time talking about Dad and Papa without mentioning my mom and Gran more, because I'm sure there's some other family stories like this out there, but Mossy Oak wouldn't be what it is without Mom and Gran. And in the early days, this if there was a way to tell this, I'd be telling the sharks out there to gouge the price on eBay. But Gran sewed a lot of the stuff in the early days, and you could dedicate a whole podcast to the early days and the design and manufacturing of the first turkey clothing. But it would absolutely not be what it is without Mom and Gran and the sacrifice that they made and the help that they made. And they never want. I mean, Gran still, when we were taking pictures of Papa when he killed his buck at the end of deer season this year, I wanted to get a picture of Gran and Papa together, and she never wants to be on camera. She doesn't want her picture taken. She doesn't want any spotlight. But nobody on the planet cares more deeply about Mossy Oak, about Dad, about Papa, or any of the grandkids. And on that same note with Gran, Papa, we talk about all the stuff that it takes to get Papa a turkey once you get to the woods, but Papa would never get to the woods if it weren't for Gran taking care of him at home. I mean, she wakes up at 3 a.m. She gets all this stuff ready. He's got this like little old sugar sack that he carries with all his, he's got granola bars and banana and ball of water and all.
It's a white sugar sack, by the way.
Colonial sugar sack.
It's got
bag.
his backup ammo. He carries his clip in there if he's got a rifle. But Gran, she wakes up early. She cooks him breakfast. we pull up to pick up Pawpaw, and she's on the front steps helping him out the door. I mean, it's very cool.
It's a great story.
Yeah.
Thank you for pointing that out.
They're amazing, and Pawpaw, and he's so patient too. Like I think that at one time he had never had, like, maybe still has never had like a legitimate argument / fight with her in 60 plus years, however many years they've been married. He just, and he told me a long time ago, he said, look, he said, you can be happy or you can be right.
A lot of wisdom in that
A
right
lot
there,
of wisdom
buddy.
in that statement.
Yeah, there really is.
And then, but yeah, and last story on that note, because it's what he just said. But I thought I'd always heard about Pawpaw, like he's the most patient man in the world. He doesn't argue with Gran no matter what. Like he's just got textbook patience. And so last year we were getting ready for Pawpaw's next to last turkey hunt. We're at Shamula. Me and Neill and Dad are all going with him, and we're getting ready to go. Again, Gran's been up for hours already before I woke up, making sure, stressing out, making sure he's got everything ready. And so Pawpaw, now he's got his walker, so he moves real slow. So he's moving through the kitchen just at his little slow pace, and Gran is right next to him, like asking him a million questions, like, you got this, you got that, what about this, what about that, you gonna be okay? And she's got his face mask. She said, don't forget your face mask, and she's like trying to, put it on him, and I'm like, oh, I think I can read Pawpaw's mind. I'm like, man, this is it. This is the patience I'm talking about. He wants to tell her to chill out so bad. And Pawpaw goes, Gran can't hear very well. And Pawpaw goes, Gran. And she hears him, and he looks at her, and he just like pats his lips for a kiss, and she gives him a good luck kiss.
Nah.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, all right, I'm an idiot. I thought I had Pawpaw inside his brain, and he's over there,
Nope.
and he loves it.
Oh, wow. Well, is there anything else y'all wanted to talk about or mention or shout out or anything? But we really would like to get y'all back on here again and talk some more. I think this has been fun.
This is our first time being on a podcast of any sort, so yeah.
Yeah. Well, how about that? First time. Go here. There's 4 or 5 people listening to this thing. So. Yeah, we've been having fun.
Shout out
so.
to the 10 listeners out there.
Yeah. So why don't y'all should give a shout out to your mother, because she's got to be a saint
She
to
is
put
a
up with your
saint.
father.
You have no idea.
And shout out to Caroline and Hillary too, because we gotta check every box on
There
the
you
women
go.
Yeah, you do.
in the family.
Yeah, you do. That's
Hey, it takes it. You got to have somebody supporting you to do what you do, and there's no question about that.
Well, look, this has been a lot of fun. Mac, you got anything to add? Wake up over there.
I'm awake. I enjoy talking to everybody and get to hear some stories that I've heard, on the tailgate talk sometimes, and just how much I appreciate Mr. Fox and Mr. Toxey, and kind of getting to grow up hunting with y'all. I feel like I've taken some things, or that y'all have taken some things that you've learned from your dad and Mr. Fox, and kind of passed that along to me, and I hope to do that with my son one day. So it's living on, absolutely.
That's good.
I think I'd like to take full responsibility for teaching Mac almost everything he knows in the woods.
I will say, me and Mac hunted together one time, and we didn't kill a turkey. We actually hunted on the Tombigbee River. But Neil and Mac, y'all doubled like 3 times maybe, and probably less than a dozen hunts. I mean, y'all's percentage
Mac
is
and I
through the roof.
probably killed more turkeys than times we've turkey hunted together.
Yeah, y'all's percentage.
I know y'all wore them out behind
Y'all's percentages
I think the
the
last 3 times we've turkey hunted together. Last 4 times we've turkey hunted together, we've killed 6 turkeys.
Sounds like y'all need to go in the morning.
Yeah.
One of
We
the
saved it
questions
for the
that
right
one of the questions I considered asking was, what was the over and under on how many turkeys Neil has killed barefooted? I heard that there was a story between
2.
you and Mac with.
We probably don't need to talk about that anymore.
2 or 3. Yeah.
Some things are best left untold on that.
Yeah. So, well, look, this has been a lot of fun, and I want to thank Jason and Richie and McElwain's over here somewhere, but we've had a lot of fun. I think this has been an interesting podcast.
great.
I think we'll do this again. I'd like to. So, all right. Well, it's about that time.
About that time.
Goodbye, Dudley.
Get us out of here, Cleveland.